This is the view right here.
Yeah.
This is incredible.
I'm not saying we built this whole area just for this car to look good, but we kind of built this whole area for the... Oh, see, because it's so dark, you need somewhere really bright because there's a lot of detail on it. So it's not like you can put it in the corner. And it looks menacing in the dark, but I think when it's out in the open, it looks really nice.
It looks so good. So what is a Corvette to you? You know, you're from Ireland. You're not wearing New Balances. You're not wearing...
I don't have a bun bag.
Yeah. And jean shorts.
To be honest, it's like we never got the Corvette, obviously, and American imports are super rare. And if they're imported to Ireland, it's usually a middle-aged guy with a, really reserved taste in cars. And I love the shape of the Corvette, but I've got to say that the inspiration for it came very much from the 24-hour Le Mans yellow and black Corvettes and Matt Field's Corvette. Because when I saw Matt Field's Corvette, I went, that's a sports car. Like a proper sports car, not a coupe to look like a sports car. That was before even the A90. It was a proper sports car that looked cool to me. So he showed a lot of us the way with his YouTube series, and I was like, okay, let's see if we could get a C6. So there was none for sale in Ireland. There was 6 for sale in the UK, and this one was a stock automatic blue Corvette with chrome wheels. And the guy had it fully valeted, plastic on the steering wheel, plastic on the seats. His daily driver with his wife, low mileage LS3. So the LS3 was why I bought it. And then he was like, oh, I bought it sight unseen because I didn't care. And we brought it. I never drove the car 1 kilometer on the road. I said, if I drive it, I'll never strip it. So we just got in the same day, stripped the whole car. And what's really funny about this car is that we knew we were going to do a kit on it. So another guy from the UK bought the entire body of the car, the blue body.
Oh.
And within 24 hours, he had a silver car to a blue car. Because it all clips off.
I'm really surprised that this chassis didn't take off in drifting earlier.
I think, it took someone I think Daigo's a good example as well. So when I went to Japan, Daigo had one in his reception area. And I just liked the aggressive nature of it. I like the sleek body lines. I think it looks a lot more aggressive. And then obviously when we built this car, HGK, which is in Latvia, who make all of the Eurofighters carbon body kits, they had a Corvette kit they built just for Daigo. So that was the first one. So they had the molds and started pricing everything up. This was supposed to be a much simpler build for me. And then it turned out, in Europe, strangely, we had much more access to good parts for a Corvette than America because HGK did carbon everything. And that was in Latvia, so we had no import duty or big shipping cost. And then Samsonis is in Europe as well. So the sequential actually turned out cheaper than a manual conversion because I can't go to a scrapyard, get a Corvette and strip it for parts. There is none. So I've got to ship everything, from the States. Then we decided to go, okay, we're going to fab it up a bit like a drift car. We did some things differently than Matt did, but the cage is very much inspired by what he did, the rear structure. And that was version 1. So we had this Corvette in all carbon. It was really cool. Everyone liked it. And
it's funny that you mentioned that though, because when you put this on paper and you tell somebody that it has a Samsonis transmission, it has all HGK carbon.
Yeah, and a Winters differential.
And a Winters quick change.
Yep.
On paper, it sounds like you spent so much money on this thing, but it's actually...
I'm not going to say I didn't, but it didn't cost more than if I was trying to build it like someone was building a Pro-Am car in the US, because the import duty, for example, 4 fenders, just fiberglass fenders for a Corvette like wide body, that's no problem if you're in the US, it costs $1,000. But it was $1,500 to ship it here because they're such big awkward parts. So a lot of the stuff being in Europe, one company, which was HGK, could send me 1 crate with everything I needed. And obviously it escalated quite a bit from there. We did a little bit, we built the engine, we completely built it top to bottom. These race manifolds are actually from the 24-hour Le Mans car. So the company that makes those in California, we actually got those equal length headers from them. And they were super pumped to work with us because it was like, they were such an overkill for this.
That is so cool.
Yeah, and we heat wrapped everything, and then we have poly intake, which is obviously standard with these, the high rise. The fabrication was all done, and everything else bar that was done in Ireland, which is a strange thing because everyone I went to with this car to build it had never even seen one before. So they had to figure out the fiberglass panels, the bulkheads, and what we really find funny about this car in Ireland, it fools everybody that because we painted the chassis silver, everybody assumes this is all metal. but it's all plastic. Everything in a Corvette is plastic. The bulkhead's plastic, all this is plastic. So it was a weird car to work on, but in Ireland and Europe, at the time, there was no other one. And then obviously tons of Corvettes came along and everybody was drifting them. And then we got to a point where maybe form and function started to mix a little with the car. Because I'm not the best drifter in the world, and it is easier to make the car more competitive, but I wanted to just look cool. So some of the things we did were just for the sake of it looking very good.
It looks so insane. And it's gotta be so lightweight now.
You know what's funny about the Corvette? They're already lightweight. So when you build, like we've built S14s, Miatas, JZXs. And the minute you start ripping all the interior out and ripping all the stuff out, you go, we're saving 500 kilos, blah, blah, blah. The Corvette is made out of plastic and like aluminium. So even though you put all this stuff on it, all these panels that were now carbon were plastic. So they're not really saving much. So you don't see the dramatic weight loss that you would in a normal drift car when it's like really heavy sound systems, really heavy. Sure, the interior does it. But in the body, you still have these really two heavy chassis legs that run through the car, and everything else is plastic and aluminium. And that's the problem when you're trying to weld to it, because you can't weld to the floor in this car because the floor is fiberglass, wood, and fiberglass. And we didn't know any of this. So when we would drill like for a seat rail, wood chippings would come out. And we were like, what's happening here? So we'd have to mount it, we had to mount under the car. A lot of funny, funky stuff to figure out as we went along. But it was all, once we did the carbon, a lot of people were saying, why do you do Kevlar? It's so much stronger. If you think about it from a cost-effective point of view, if you buy a fiberglass panel, you got to paint it or wrap it. If you buy Kevlar, you got to paint it or wrap it. But you buy carbon, you can just leave it carbon and it looks cool in black.
No, it looks great.
So black was the whole theme with the car for me originally. Then when we had it looking like a normal Corvette that was in carbon, a friend of ours in the UK, a very good friend of mine, Axel, he built a Kevlar one with a 3-rotor in it. So all of a sudden he had the coolest Corvette. Friendly competition. I rang up Darren at Group D and said, look, the car works great. It's a great drift car, but everyone has Corvettes now. They're not really hitting like they used to. I need this thing to look like something from Pikes Peak craziness. And he'd already built the Quattro. He'd already built his own PS13. So we knew he had an imagination. I said, go as wild as you want. So I didn't even see the design until it was done. And he spent 3 months in the evenings just measuring, cutting, trying to get stuff together. And this is the creation of him. And then we did the livery very subtle, because when I saw it, I said, this kind of looks like a jet fighter, right? It looks kind of like something military spec. So we did this kind of military theme.
I love it.
Yeah.
It looks so cool. You had drift games, Japan, Ireland, amazing.
We always say it's funny because this is one of our logos, Japan to Ireland in an American car, but it makes sense. But all our sponsors, they've had a lot of input. All the wiring is Link ECU, the suspension's all BC.
I just love this so much because this like rubber skirt makes it look lower than it actually is.
But very inspired by Ralph Welts. Because if you look at all their Porsches, they look super low, but if you watch them go over a speed bump, it's just a rubber lip. So we said, well, that at least will protect the car if it goes over a curb or something.
Yeah, it looks so good. I love all this simple design aspect of it. It's just so, I don't know, it's just so different.
And the fenders are the most like it or hate it part of the car, but that's why Darren did them. He said, nobody's ever going to talk as much about fenders as they will in this car because there is none. And he liked the idea that, because he saw it was a McPherson strut, he's like, it's like a single-seater race car. So because we have so many suspension sponsors, he goes, but nobody can see them. Now you can see the FDF and the BC, you can see it all moving. Is it a good practical solution? Absolutely not. Because when you go into the burnout box and you pick up all the rubber, it just fires it straight back up on the windscreen along with all the water. So from a practical point of view, it doesn't work great, but from a cool looking different point of view, I think this angular look kind of matches the whole, because the car is quite smooth in terms of lines, now it's quite angular.
And it's this crazy lip going on too in the front.
Well, you've got the bumper, you've got a lip, you've got another lip, and then you've got another lip. So there's basically 4 lips on the front of the car.
I heard you like lips, so we put
a lip
on
on your lip on your lip.
Yeah.
So yeah, because the bumper sits quite high on these, and then the hardest part is when you buy fresh carbon fiber panels from HGK that are so beautifully made, and then Darren hands you back 40% of them on the floor because he's cut so many holes and bits into them, but it worked really, really well. Again, it's a wild-looking car that isn't over-engineered in terms of drifting. It drifts really well.
Tell me about the wheels.
So this is an interesting story. So this is one of our sponsors, Strom Wheels, and we actually designed this wheel. So we had a partner that they sold lots of wheels, and some of them weren't to my taste, you know, and I said, hey, what if we gave you some ideas for some wheels. So we went with something that was like a Blitz 03, like an AC Schnitzer, but all kind of mixed together. And we created these. And the reason these wheels exist is to try and be a cost-effective, cool wheel for your car. Because not everyone can afford 3-piece wheels, especially drifters, if they're buying 10, 16 wheels. So these are like €1,000, $1,000 for 4 wheels, low offsets. The back are like ET10, 10.5, so like it looks good on everything. The amazing thing about the Corvette is that it runs the same PCD as a BMW, so which is really unusual. And we have adapters to run them to Nissan Fitment, so the same wheels on all our drift cars fit all our drift cars, so it's quite easy to put them together.
Man, this thing is just so crazy. Yeah,
powder coated everything. We've done a mix of different colors to kind of give it that military theme. It's got upgraded fuel system. It's got it's all the stuff you'd expect in a drift car, but not like over the top. I think the look is far more over the top than the functionality. And for me, I'm not a FD pro. I drive at a pro level, but my big thing is I have such a busy schedule. I don't want to go to the track and spend 3 hours troubleshooting everything on the car. Simple car. What I love about V8s is that it's either a coil pack or it's blown up. They're the two things you're looking for in a V8. So you don't have so much, and even if it loses a coil pack, you can still drift on 7 cylinders, where in the turbo cars, they misfire, they break down, they have so many little vacuum leaks and whatever. This was just simple. So the plan with this car is now an upgrade. So we have a Mass Motorsport V8, which is a LS3 stroke to 7 litre. And the plan is to put that in it with ITBs on electronic throttle with the Link ECU and run about 750 NA, which is the plan, and have it revved to 9,500 so that the engine matches the looks.
Because you don't actually have any other NA cars, huh? Or you're not a big NA guy. This is the only NA car that you have. I mean, you have this pickup truck.
And this is a very different NA. This is very slow. And so is the Datsun. But to me, American cars should have a V8. I know that sounds like we're all being very stereotypical, but I'm not a huge, I wouldn't put an LS, say, in an S14. I like the whole JDM style, but when I build an American car, I think that's what I like about American cars, that grunt, that idle, that choppy cam, that stuff I think suits these cars really well. And I had an RTR Mustang before this, so I got used to the V8 power and the whole thing. And honestly, from a sponsorship point of view and that kind of stuff, this is such an unusual car that it attracts attention, and obviously all of our partners want attention for their products. So it's not about I've realized a long time ago, and I'm very good friends with James Dean, that I can look at him in the yardstick and say, that ship has sailed, I'm not going to be as good as him. But if I do something different, it gives me an opportunity to have fun, not worry about the wins and losses, but then when you see kids smile when they see the car or people take photos, that's what it's all about for me.
It's unusual for Europe, all of Europe.
Yeah, because I think we're unusual in the fact that we like being different, maybe more than winning, because we're doing it our own way. So that's why we built a Corvette, which there's probably 3 C6s in the whole country, and we also built the first SR20 NC Miata, because we were like, we'll just be different. And even if we're really bad, we're doing it our way. We're doing it our own funky way. So it's like a personality in the car, because obviously I should just build a 2JS15 and then I would have a much better competitive car. But there's so many good drivers, and I run those championships. I'm not getting in the dogfight with them. I'd rather be in the corner looking cool, having a fun time. And it's competitive. I've done this car I think I maybe done 8 pro events in this car. It hasn't qualified outside the top 10 in any of those events, so it works really well. But is it Drift Masters FD level? No. So yeah, that's basically the emergency release for the trunk and the passenger seat, because they are electronic door handles and you can't have those for competition. So a little bit of reworking there.
It's very clean in here. This is pretty cool, Drift Games.
Yeah, so a friend of ours, a young guy, I think he's only 19 years of age, started doing carbon fiber stuff in Ireland. He built us a full forged carbon dashboard for this with our 3D printed logo in there. The roof is stock with just a carbon skin on it, because the latches and stuff become an issue when you do the carbon, and I like the fact you can take the roof off it. It's another novelty in Europe that most cars don't have. We went for the lightest of lightest seats, which is not the most comfortable, but it looks cool and matches the aesthetic of the car. Some of the interesting things are the fact that all of the controls are on the steering wheel, and we have this kind of cord, which you think would be a nightmare, but it actually works really well. And then you've got ignition, you've got your starter, wipers, all your lights on the steering wheel. This is just to be different. It doesn't make it any more competitive. In fact, the first time I was in a competition in this car, I was deciding on the start line whether I should put my wipers on or not. It was just kind of like drizzling down. And I went into the first corner, and tried to put the wipers on, but it was spinning, the button was spinning around, and I turned the car off in the middle of the drift trying to find the wipers. But I managed to turn it back on again without losing too much. But I realized, make that decision at the start line. So it's got the whole loom, nothing from the original Corvette's left. It's all rewired, custom loom. We've got a Samsonus 4-speed sequential because I think they're cheaper. And in Europe, they're now the same price roughly as a brand new OR154, which I was telling you guys, because an OR154, no matter where you get it, is imported from Japan. Whereas if they're making this in Europe, it's still a little bit cheaper on custom. So Samsonuses aren't so bad here. We can get parts readily available for them. And of course, remember the Samsonus in the back of the car. So the weirdest thing about the Corvette is that the gearbox and the diff are joined together.
Yeah.
So you have a Winters onto a Samsonus, and then a cable runs up to here. So the only downside of the Corvette, which I'm sure anyone knows, is that if you have a problem, you got to drop the whole drivetrain out the back of the car. So that's kind of a bit of a pain, and my mechanic had to figure all that out himself because he's never seen a Corvette before. So it's been very reliable. It was automatic, as I mentioned. We put in a pedal from a manual car. But it still has the big brake pedal from the automatic, which people know. And you know what? I actually quite like it, because when you get in a panic, it's easy to find because it's the biggest pedal, and a Willwood clutch pedal. So we put the Link ECU full dash in there, the Samsonus display, and then other than that, it's quite simple on the inside. Fire suppression system, and yeah, simple is the best, I think. It's all the fuses and relays. They were here, but the tunnel got really hot, so we put them a little bit higher. But easy to work on, nothing too crazy. And like for an American car, it's quite tame in terms of its build, in terms of its spec. But for a European car, everything is so unusual to people. Even the LSs are kind of unusual. So we've learned a lot with it, but it's been super reliable, very fun to drive, and a lot of grip. And like, it has about 600 horsepower, which is just enough kind of for the tracks we have in Ireland and the UK. They're not mega huge tracks. In Europe, you'd want another 2 or 3 or bolt turbo supercharger or whatever on it, but I like the simplicity, and it runs on our pump fuel, which is horrendous fuel here as well. We only have one type of fuel, so easy, cheap, I can do laps in it, and it doesn't break.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to support us directly, go to LarryChenPrints.com. I print and sign every single one of these. This is the perfect gift, or it's the perfect piece of art for your wall.